Now, as much as it is a great pleasure to see you, sadly it's not a particularly pleasurable time to be in the United Kingdom these days, with our current political situation being what it is.
It is, you could actually say, Benedict, I would like to put this firmly on the table. For the first time in my life, I am actually ashamed to be British. We have become a laughingstock. The events, the political events of the last few days and the events surrounding the release of prisoners, the grotesque performances in the House of Commons, the absurd disjunction of the Prime Minister shooting off and leading somebody that I think we can only describe as an ass as our Deputy Prime Minister. I am ashamed.
I mean, do you know what? I'm going to start with saying that when this government came in to power last year,
Oh, that wonderful moment. What are the grown-ups are in charge, aren't
yes,
they?
yes, and of all of them, genuinely, he was the one that I thought, if you were to put money on who's going to lose their position for some fumble, some mishap, he was probably the one that you'd put your money on. So in many ways, I was pleasantly surprised that he's held on this long, that he'd actually managed to outlast a greater array of admittedly pretty miserable characters. But nonetheless, he was outperforming what I thought of him. But of course, it was therefore inevitable that something was going to go wrong, and it just so happened that it was after he was shuffled away from the Foreign Office into this new role. I thought it was embarrassing. I thought it was, frankly, I also thought it was embarrassing, as you say, that nobody trusts David Lammy to sort of utter a statement. But clearly, I don't think he trusts the people behind him, the people that are briefing him either in his position. If he felt confident enough or that he had to just sort of go off of his own volition and try to ad lib things, clearly he doesn't feel entirely secure in what it is that he's being told. And that's sort of what I find very interesting, is that you have a man who clearly thinks that he is superior to everyone in every way. And he's working with a group of people who, because they are civil servants, because they are special advisors, because there is a team behind there, and this is the Labour Party, and this is our civil service, they obviously feel the same way about themselves. And there is a breakdown there in trust between the minister, who is the figurehead, who is the one representing the state. There is a breakdown between him and the state itself.
Can we just go back? Because they're the things that I think people, or most people, will have actually noticed and people will actually have watched, to Lammy's performance in the Commons. And that was extraordinary. I think most extraordinary was that he posted a tweet afterwards congratulating himself on his performance and on being the first black person to do Prime Minister's questions. Now, imagine you were black, Benedict. What would you feel that that is the trophy performance?
I think you can imagine.
He is a figure of fun, isn't he? I mean, this is somebody who is a genuine clown. There is, of course, the famous performance on Mastermind, which I think we should remind ourselves about. This is somebody who, when asked who succeeds Henry VIII, says Henry VII. Now, what mentality does that suggest?
Honestly, it was just it's the sort of thing where you just wonder, it not even would one need a sort of an understanding of history. You wouldn't even need to know the sort of a history of the kings of England. It's a simple numerical issue, and to not be able to sort of put one before the other just
Yeah.
strikes you as somebody who, on a fundamental level, shouldn't be in charge of things that require basic things like logic or following patterns. That's a real concern, given that this man has been Foreign Secretary and is now the Lord Chancellor.
And it is two great offices of state being held by somebody that, frankly, if you did that, you imagine one of these things that we give to children, a multi-answer, multi-question test. if a child delivered that, and then he also faced with the choice of who who is responsible for the detection of detects nuclear style radiation, and he replies Marie Antoinette rather than Marie Curie, and identifies red Leicester as a variety of blue cheese. Now, this is genuinely what in my day used to be called educationally subnormal. And you give somebody successively two of the greatest offices of state. And the result is you have this pantomime. Now, but what again, I want to go back to that phrase that you raised, obviously, right at the beginning, and it was Andrew Marr, wasn't it? You know, the absolute centrist of centrist dads. You know, the point at which the centre dad spectrum hangs down absolutely dead centre in its impenetrable, I think, pomposity, and we can now see stupidity. We were going to have government that was respectable again. There would be no more Boris Clown Show. The adults were going to be in charge. The scenes that we've seen since, and I think they genuinely culminate in this. They genuinely culminate in the most I think it must be the most clownish behaviour that the House of Commons has ever seen, and that takes a very great deal. You know, we've had things like the snatching of the mace by Heseltine, we've had bell tolling and all the rest of it, but they were by intelligent men. I will defer for that moment, I will grant for that moment that title to Heseltine for a particular purpose. This was simply clownish behaviour. But what shocks me more, Benedict, is the absence of consequence. The Speaker summons him to correct. After all, he 6 times lied. He lied 6 times. Conventionally, lying in the House of Commons is a resignation matter. He is summoned to, I think, as a kind of really very mild slap on the wrist to deliver a corrective statement in the House. And he simply refuses, saying, and it's quoted, and it's on the record, that it would be career suicide. And he's allowed to get away with it. I mean, what again does this tell us about his boss? Starmer says famously he's contemptuous of politics, and that he much prefers being at Davos to being at Westminster. So we have a prime minister who is openly contemptuous of our machinery of government and leaves as his substitute when he's swanning around at some completely unnecessary event of COP 30 or whatever it's called in Brazil. He leaves this clown behind him.
I do wonder if actually a lot more of this is, of course, to do with the standard and the precedent that has been set by the real man who actually thinks that he is the big man and the dictator in all of this, which is, of course, Keir Starmer, somebody who, let's be clear, if we're accusing David Lammy of lying, of being duplicitous, well, Keir Starmer, I think, has absolutely sort of, set the benchmark very high, to a degree that I think even Alistair Campbell would blush at.
No, now come on. I've got to hold you to a test of reality, Benedict. Alistair Campbell blushing, I've heard of many things, but